All right, welcome back. So we are beginning at the beginning here. Lecture 1. Open it up. All right. Again, just as a few reminders to you, everything that is written on these PowerPoints, said by me in lecture, whether virtually or in person, seen on video, written in your book, talked about by a guest lecturer, said by colleagues in a class discussion, etc., etc., etc. It's fair game for quizzes and tests. Anything and everything is up for grabs. If you pay attention, though, if you're not sleeping, if you have even an inkling about what's going on, you take notes, you do your work, you've got nothing to worry about as far as this class is concerned. I've never had a student have problems who's halfway paid attention. Again, I want to make this the class that you're not up at night worrying about. So, the email again, Jonathan, my name spelled again correctly, Jonathan, _Parker@icc.edu. Make sure you send it to that address. The misspellings of my name are the number one reason, again, why students' emails just never get to me. And then they get mad at me, and it's not my fault. So make sure that happens. So what is politics? At this point, if you were live with me, I would ask you to give possible definitions for what this is, but as we cannot have a discussion today because while you're watching this, I'm teaching at the moment, the generic definition, and guys, I just pulled this out of Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the art or science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy. And again, if I haven't said it, I'm saying it now. If font is differentiated like this, if it's bolded, maybe in another color, it's fair game for a test. All right? I'm giving you really a test question. So, the art or science concerned with guiding or influencing governmental policy. Fair enough. Politics can cover a wide variety of things, almost anything. Somebody's political leanings, your politics, your personal politics disgust me. You believe this, that, and the other thing, and I believe this, that, and I'm right because, you're wrong. That way, I'm sure, we've all known people like that. Policies, just a generalization, Republicans only want tax cuts to help their rich donors, a generalization, a stereotype. Politics can talk about policies as well. Party politics, just party politics, not political. Frank got 54% of the vote at the convention and became chairman of the Republican Party. Party politics is politics also. So is, if you run and you get elected to the state senate, that's politics as well. It permeates every aspect of life. I mean, even family life. I'm sure, most of you, if you have a sibling, you have an idea of who your parent's favorite is. Politics permeates into every single aspect. It isn't always necessarily, this big formal, let's have a debate about pro-life versus pro-choice on the floor of the U.S. Senate. It can be simply, who has to take out the trash tonight? Is it you or you? Well, Dad, you decide. Well, him. I like my other son maybe a little bit better. Very cynical sounding, but it happens. So politics, as I said, can penetrate almost any aspect of life. American political culture. It's a little bit of a mess right now, I know that, but it's a system of shared political traditions, customs, beliefs in our institutions, the Supreme Court, Congress, and the presidency, and our values. So what are the core principles of our political culture? The answer isn't none. We have no political culture. We do. Liberty. You have the right to be free as long as another's rights are not harmed. Okay? There's equality. People have the same or similar opportunities to compete and achieve. Now, equality is a word that is often confused. Equality doesn't mean everybody wins. Equality doesn't mean everybody gets to be, the manager at Starbucks. Equality should, in a perfect world, mean that everybody gets a chance to apply for and interview for the manager position at the Starbucks, but only one person's going to get it. Now, in a perfect world, that would be, how it worked. Everybody would be equally considered, and you'd go from there. But you don't get the same results, but everybody gets the opportunity to compete at the same level and equally. So, example, if you take high school seriously, if you go to college, if you go to law school, you're usually going to be richer than those who drop out of high school. Now, you had the same opportunity. You and classmate X were both in high school. Classmate X didn't take their studies seriously, dropped out of high school, probably not working as good a job as you, who went to law school and are now hopefully making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And democracy. So a government run by the people through elected representatives. And there's an argument to be made, that the United States isn't a democracy. Or it is. That might be an essay question on your first test. Hint, hint. Does the government work for us, or do we work for the government? Up to you to decide. So, this isn't Gallup. I said it on Monday. If I only make one mistake in a class, it's a good day. But Pew Research Center, a reputable firm, did put out this the poll on trusting government. These are typically done on a rolling basis, if not quarterly, yearly at the very least. So public trust in government remains low. Only about 1/4 of Americans say they can trust the government in Washington to do what is right. Just about always, 2%, or most of the time, 22%. And you can see it's eroded over time. 75%, or 73, pardon me, of the percent of the population trusted the government to do what is right under President Eisenhower. Kennedy, it went up to 77. Johnson, and we go on a steady low, down to Papa Bush, 21%, 20%, to Obama, 19, 10, 18, and we come back up a little bit in the first bit of the Biden presidency. But you can read through this and look through this site, and I encourage you to do so at your leisure. So what is the nature of U.S. politics? Politics functions within government, although they're not the same. In theory, if men were angels, to quote the Federalist Papers, you could have a United States Senate full of independents who just discussed the public good and did what was best for the citizenry without any thought to donors or special interests or lobby groups or whatever. You could have that. Some countries do. have that, or something approximating that. But politics functions within government in our country. They're not the same thing. So some argue politics is decisions made in an environment of conflict, while others, like political scientist Harold Lasswell, I'm not going to ask you about names. I'm not going to say, what did Harold Lasswell say? That isn't going to be a question that you're ever going to see on a test. Who gets what, when, and how? So, redistribution. Taking tax money and redistributing it to areas where it is thought to be needed. So these are related definitions. They both involve conflict. They both share this idea that government decisions affect who is impacted and how they are impacted. Politics encompasses who gets what, when, and how, and this is a very good definition. This captures the connection between politics and power. The who says something about who has the power. Is it Senator Durbin? Is it Senator Duckworth? Is it President Biden? Depends, really. Is it Governor Pritzker? When one gets what one wants says something about how important that individual or group is and just how much power that person or group has. So if we get to election time, when President Biden's running possibly for a second term, will Illinois, with now 19 electoral votes, get preference over, let's say, Montana with 3 electoral votes? Probably so. Illinois is a solidly Democratic state who hasn't voted for a Republican presidential candidate since Ronald Reagan. Montana, Biden would have no hope of winning anyway. Pritzker, on the other hand, Governor Pritzker, when he's up and he's running for re-election now, if Chicago needed something and Edwardsville, say, down south, well, I would guess, I don't know for sure, that Edwardsville is a more conservative area than Chicago. Any area really is a more conservative area than Chicago. So Governor Pritzker might be inclined to send state money up to Chicago before a town like Edwardsville. And how the power is obtained speaks to the strength of the individual or groups involved. Now, in the examples I just gave to you, votes and electoral power is how the metric we use to measure the strength of these individuals or groups. But it isn't the only way. So various groups, because resources are scarce, are going to compete always to determine who gets what, how much they get, and under what circumstances they get it. That's just the way of it. Usually means if one group derives benefits, others bear costs. If we're going to have a program that maybe, let's take food stamps, gives food stamps out, people who make over X amount of dollars a year might be taxed a bit more to pay for the program. The people who need the food stamps are getting the benefit. The people who make over X amount of dollars are bearing the cost. These public policies that we have are those laws that government makes within the context of a political process. Now, that would have to go through the state Congress, and in Illinois, it would have to get approval, And the casual observer really would only need to look at opposing views that occur in the policymaking areas, including our city councils, our state legislatures. There are some battles, ladies and gentlemen, that occur certainly in the Peoria City Council and the Lincoln City Council where I live, and Springfield and the state legislature that rival anything that's seen in the U.S. Congress to see this in action. Like healthcare reform, big deal in the Obama administration, certainly still a big deal. We're still trying to figure that one out. So those who were previously uninsured were going to be insured because higher income persons paid an additional tax to make sure that happened. So the patients, the taxpayers, and the insurance companies, the three actors in this drama, let us say, are each affected differently because of politics. So I said actors, those who are involved in the conflict, they're called actors. Those who sit on the sidelines and observe, they're called spectators. So we have to consider the role of actors. We have to consider the role of spectators in the political process. So politics becomes a mobilization of bias. And this is a fancy way of saying lobbying, where actors attempt to show spectators why they should care about and become actively involved with the conflict. This is where you see lobbying. These are where you see interest groups, say AIPAC, the American-Israeli PAC, Political Action Committee, will light up the phones in the U.S. Capitol and say, you need to support Israel, you need to cast your vote in favor or against whatever policy because it affects Israel positively, negatively, whatever. These interest groups and things like that are attempts to mobilize bias in favor or against whatever issue. So this way, these actors build a base of support for their cause. They achieve victory if they're able to mobilize enough people to join them. If you can get 51% of whatever legislative body on board, you've won. Immigration also, this was a big thing during the Trump presidency. It still is. But this is another example of the mobilization of bias. So you have groups seeking to open U.S. borders to more immigrants. You have groups that have the opposite view. But these groups that maybe seek to open the U.S. borders to more immigrants, they've brought non-immigrant groups to their side by showing how immigration divides families. Oh, this poor family, for example, the grandmother, the elderly grandmother, and the 5 young children from, let's say, Honduras have made it to the United States, but their father and mother are still behind. Isn't this a shame and a human tragedy that this poor old grandmother has to raise these 5 children because we won't let their mother and father into the country? Something like that. It's just an example. I'm just pulling this out of my head. There's no basis. So, some maybe who advocate stricter border control policies suggest that less restrictive immigration controls increase unemployment in various economic sectors such as agriculture and blue-collar labor. So citizens who are unemployed or underemployed will be losing out jobs to migrant workers who are not citizens, and perhaps this is why we should have stricter border control to help the U.S. economy. But a factor here, a key factor in understanding of politics, is always that resolution is achieved through peaceful means. Resolution, I'll say that again. Resolution is achieved through peaceful means. When conflict becomes violent, politics has failed. It's no longer politics. It's a civil conflict, a civil war, a domestic issue, but it's no longer politics. Politics should be, ideally anyway, peaceful. We can yell and scream at each other, but the second a gun is drawn or a fist is thrown. We've lost the thread. And that is the introductory lecture. So if you haven't watched the introduction video, the instruction video rather, please do that. Just to remind you, you have a test to take today, and it has to be taken today. It's a completion grade again, so the only way you're not going to get 25 points for this test is if you don't take it by 11:59. And that is it. Email with any questions that you have. And I will see you guys on Friday over Zoom. The link's going to be posted very shortly.